Welcome back to Empowered and Out, the podcast for LGBTQ plus professionals rewriting the rules on career, confidence, and living out loud. I'm your host, Jonathan Barbe. Today on Empowered and Out, I am joined by a man whose reputation in the voiceover world is as bold as his laugh and his legendary quotes. Jerry Ryba, affectionately known as Rybawitz or Jelly, has been a talent agent for 35 years, specializing in voiceover for the last 20. He's the guy behind the guy or gal or non-binary powerhouse whose voice you've heard on commercials, trailers, network promos, and animated franchises. He's helped actors go from a few thousand a year to thriving six-figure careers, and he does it with honesty, hustle, and humor. We're diving into how the voiceover business works, what makes a great demo, the regional quirks of copy, how to find your signature sound, and yes, we're going there with the LGBTQ plus stories as well. This is going to be honest, hilarious, and packed with value, whether you're a voiceover curious or just here for the industry tea. Jerry, welcome to
Thank,
Empowered and Out.
thank you.
I am so glad you're here. I'm very happy that you reached out on the post that I did on LinkedIn. So thank you. Thank you.
There's so many people that want to be in voiceover and they don't know where to start. And there's a lot of kind of conferences all over the nation. And so people are just kind of delving into it more as people do these podcasts from home or whatnot. Everyone thinks you could be a voiceover legend at any given moment. And that is my job to tell you no.
That's all right. Sometimes we have to hear no. I think the times when we think, oh, we must be the greatest voice or we must be the greatest actor and then, or singer, whatever it might be, or podcaster. And sometimes we have to have that reality check.
Great.
All right. So let's get started from the top. How did you first get into the world of talent representation and when did voiceover become your specialty?
I told my father when I was young that I wanted to be in the entertainment business, live in Malibu, drive a Jeep, and own a boat. I lived in Malibu for a while, but I enjoyed Hermosa Beach better because it was a better beach and more fun. I had a Jeep till I found out they don't like to stop as well as a German car, so I stopped getting those. And owning a boat, I found out that the two best days of a boat owner's life are the day they get it and the day they sell it. So it's much easier to rent. But the voiceover side of it, I got it in terms of kind of representing people. I was very good at kind of selling things to people that they didn't need. It was easy to converse with people when I was doing fundraising for the high school I went to or whatever kind of fundraising things you did or the things you always kind of tried to do as kids. So I got really good at kind of just selling things to people. And then I realized, I don't want to sell coffee cups. I don't want to sell, paper clips. I don't want to, be in one of those office supply guys. And I wanted to be in the business and I took my college major into doing creative writing and English minor. But I just found I was really good at selling stuff. So I ran a party for 40,000 people called Springfest at OU. And with a couple friends of mine, we had a full volunteer team and it just got so fun at just raising the money that I talked to my cousin who was a big writer out here. I said, you should just become an agent. And that kind of sparked it off and, kind of worked then in terms of getting in an agency and working my way up. So I find that people are much more interesting. Their minds change all the time, as opposed to coffee cups. They change them once a season.
Very true. So feel free to take us back, maybe those early cross-country adventures or stories from your very first clients.
It's when you first get you work really hard as an assistant, really busting your balls to try to get this done. The tough part about it then as you grow into that stuff is that you are now doing your assistant work as you're growing into become a young agent. So now you've got responsibilities for people. You're doing two jobs at once. You're getting paid little to no money. You're getting no sleep and you're having the time of your life. When I got into the business, everybody told me it's the worst time to be in the business. You don't want to be in it. It's awful. It's when the Japanese had bought all the studios. They said all the creativity will be gone. So when I teach classes for my alma mater, I say the same thing. It's the worst time to be in the business. It's awful now because we all hate it now because there's no work. But it's also one of the best times to be in the business because you can do so much stuff on your own. We didn't have those kind of opportunities back then. You never had that opportunity to kind of create your own movies or create your own stuff and then be able to sell it on the internet. And the kind of business has kind of gone in reverse where you kind of create as much content as you want. Then you try to get people find out that you start getting viewership and whatnot, and you start getting sponsorship. One of the great things about signing a client like that is when you first get that first client that someone believes in you as you believe in them, and you start forming this partnership because it is a partnership in a way, although they get 90% of the money. We do 90% of the work in terms of trying to find you those opportunities and then only get 10% of that money. But, it's a lot of work to get someone a job. And your goal is to then try to get someone an animated series or whatnot. So I started on the theatrical side of it. And, I just remember like representing people that were making, it was different. They were trying to just struggling actors, and you believe them, you can kind of see that niche, and that's how it grows. And then when you get the opportunity to grow with somebody that maybe you've got a celebrity that you work with it's kind of on their way down, and how you rebuild them in certain ways then too. And that's been another fun part of it as well. But to really kind of see someone grow where, they were just struggling, living in a van. And basically I represented this guy who he and his girlfriend had moved out from Vermont, and they were living in a van, knocked down by the river. And
I mean, not what is it? What do they call it? The LA River or whatever is in LA, like, or what
they
is?
have an LA River, and they're really building it
Yeah.
up now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and he got an audition with the thing. I worked it really hard, I pushed him, and he became a series regular on a show, which pushed him into thing. And then he went and all that stuff skyrocketed into going into Scrubs, and he was a series regular on Scrubs. He did some other series like that, and then it was just became and always like one of my best people, because he goes, you saved me, because otherwise I was going back to Vermont and working on the maple syrup farm. How exciting can that be?
For sure. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Sorry, the river thing, when you said it made me think of it, because I've been to LA enough, and I remember, I think even my sister joked, she's like, "Oh yeah, there's the LA River." I'm like, "That's not a river, but okay."
Well, you know what? It is changing now, as with climate control. I guess they're building up towns all around it now. And I think that thing smells pretty bad. But they're putting bike paths all next to it, so that's okay.
Well, I'm gonna have to check it out the next time I'm in LA. So, all right. So, looking back, was there a specific aha moment where you knew that voiceover was where you wanted to plant your flag?
In terms of representing people, like for example, I represented Bryan Cranston back in the day when he was just Tim the dentist, and that was one of our big jobs that we got him. And so I worked at a smaller agency. He was doing lots of commercial work back then, and he had done a couple guest spots here and there, and that's what he was really doing. Lots of commercial work, was really paying for everything. Uh, then he got an audition for Malcolm in the Middle, and then he left us and he went to a bigger agency and grew and that kind of stuff. So that kind of aha moment when you're going to lose somebody in that way, it's difficult, because you spend all this time building them up and making little money off them. And then as they start making the big money, they go to someone who didn't have to do any of that work. They just kind of glom them away from you. As that was starting to happen more and more at a smaller to mid-sized agency, even, the CAA and ICM and William Morris all poached from medium-sized agencies like UTA and, Gersh and all that stuff. A friend of mine offered me an opportunity to look into go into voiceover, and it was with a large agency called Cunningham. They had a lot of clients that represented theatrically at one point, so that was an easy transition. I've always enjoyed advertising in terms of the kind of fun short stories that they tell in 30 to 60 seconds, and so I knew a lot of that stuff, and it was just like you enjoyed the fast pacedness of it all, because we were cranking out 100 jobs, 100 opportunities a week for people between the five of us working there at the agency. So you're just banging that stuff out and booking, 60, 70 jobs a week. So it was fun, and the pace was great. And also then, because we had such a good client list and the agency was large enough, we kept signing better people all the time. And at the time, then we became one of the better known agencies, one of probably the best in the country, that represented young male voices. Anybody needed a male voice between 20 to 40, they called us first. We had just about everybody that was really making big money back then, commercially and animation wise. So it made it fun. It took all that threat of everything being stolen from you.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually very exciting, and that's a feat to, like, to when you've accomplished that. That's actually pretty amazing that people are reaching out to your agency to get. I know obviously some of the some of the other some of the big agencies, just because my sister has a friend and husband who work at one, and so I'm very familiar with with some of them, just after the years my sister's been in the industry. But it's very, yeah. I think some of the smaller ones, though, that you've worked, I think they can make just as big of an impact, especially on an actor, because
Well,
especially when they're getting started.
you look
Yeah.
at someone like Jack Nicholson, who was with only with Sandy Bresler at the time from his entire career. And Bresler just built a business, basically. Not that he relied everything on Jack, but Jack did very well and also had that loyalty. that kind of loyalty does exist with other people. And there are times where an agent will be at a smaller agency and the client starts really growing, but really enjoys the relationship you have because it is a relationship. You're building up this bond with somebody. They're trusting you to help them make a career so that they can
Mhm.
own a home and drive a car and feed their family. And if you keep that bond going, sometimes then the agency realizes you're just as valuable as the client. We'll take you along with this and some other clients and go with it from there. And that way, then you get to grow with them too. So it is that kind of good bonding thing. And it is all about keeping your relationships with everything, as I think everything is. And, you build those relationships, you build up your reputation, you're nice to people, but you're tough but fair. And that's what people like. You have to be kind of mean to people in a while here. Also, you have to know how far you can get away with things, in terms of you want to make the best deal for somebody and you want to keep a relationship with the studio or the people you're working with because you want to get more work for them down the road.
So is it a common occurrence to have the agent go with the talent to a bigger agency if they want them? Like, or is that a rare thing?
It
Does
does
that actually?
happen. Yeah. I did a lot of shifting in my career then too, where I shifted out of things and I would go, I knew I was going to an agency. I knew that the agency I was at was having some problems right now. Our relationship wasn't working as well. They weren't treating me as well as I wanted to be treated. And the clients felt like they weren't getting those opportunities. And, you make that move and sometimes like they can go with you because they haven't been there and they feel that stuff. And other times maybe they just came from there to go to you at that point, and now you're going back there, so you may lose those relationships. And you try to find the best thing for both people because
Mhm.
that agency is getting these kind of opportunities. You want to get the same opportunities. You just want to make sure that it's all about getting the opportunities and making sure that everyone's getting the kind of coverage they need. You want to
Okay, great.
yeah,
Yeah.
you want to make them feel comfortable in that way.
Cool. Because you had mentioned with like Jack Nicholson's agent, you're like, I know that I see it over the years. Every single time you see an award show, they're thinking, the agent, whoever they're working with, and just curious how often it happens that an agent might keep carrying on through this person's career, because obviously it makes sense if things don't work, but if you're constantly getting them work and you're constantly getting it, I would feel it's only respectful in a way to
Mhm.
try to keep that person who's been helping you, especially if it's your entire career so far, to keep them with you as
And
best
that's
if
happened
you
a
can.
lot, especially in the theatrical side of it more so. I mean, a lot of people are very loyal on the voiceover side. They find a good person and they stick with it because they know you understand them. And because the voiceover side of it is so subjective in terms of how long is, the fact that they listen to 1,000 voices for a radio spot, is kind of crazy
Wow.
sometimes. But when you look at things like theatrically, sometimes people will stick with someone for a long time. You look at someone like Tom Cruise, was represented by Paula Wagner for many, many years at CAA. And then she left, but then only left to run his production company. So that's how people grow then together. They continue their business, but as someone grows, like as a Tom Cruise does or whatever, because we have those kind of connections on the business side of it and the actors know all the creative people, finding
Yeah.
that partnership together then helps kind of work it differently in a good way.
Okay. Nice. Okay. Thanks for the explanation. It just curiosity for myself, but I'm sure even our audience is probably wondering the same thing. So,
Sure.
was there an early client who really made you think, okay, this is going to be big?
Like said, Bryan Cranston, you saw that he was going to grow. I've had some voiceover talent that started out like in the print division, and was just a model then at that point and was doing different kind of things. And like I said, just kind of making a little bit of money here and there. And we formed a bond together, and they really took classes and did the work and put the effort into it. And I was, originally like thinking it's not going to go anywhere, but every year we doubled their salary and then doubled it again and then doubled it again. And so when you go from making $10,000 a year to exponentially in that point. When someone has a six-figure income then at that point and sustains it for a number of years, and they say this is your bathroom that you built for me by getting me this crazy commercial or whatever. So I have it's lovely. I have lovely bathrooms dedicated to me across the city, and not the kind we think. We know people that have glory holes in it, but not a whole
Yeah.
bathroom.
I mean, wouldn't you want maybe a different room that they like you out?
I've been
I
told
mean,
I've been told I bought the house or that kind of stuff too. But I always try to hope that I'll get the studio named after me. But somehow
Yeah.
you pretty much go, we went through a lot of shit together.
Which is true. I mean, you
Right.
really do. So it's only fitting that you have the shitter, that
Right.
you helped build for them. So, all right. So you've helped grow some major careers in voiceover. So I've got to ask, when someone auditions, what's the thing that makes you go, yep, they got it?
And like I said, voiceover is incredibly subjective, and like they will listen, like, especially like if you're looking at, say, a voice of a car or a beer or something like that, where you're going to be doing, they have their list of who they want. The thing is, when you have a person writing the copy, someone producing the copy, the client has this, everybody has a voice in their head in terms of how they want their product and copy to be read. So my job is to not work the client so that they give them what they give, as opposed you give them what you think the client wants. Because if you give them what you think the client wants, you're not going to sound real. You're going to sound disjoint from the copy. And it is so subjective in that way that you want to have that connection. Your job is to do that call to action to get someone like me to go out and buy whatever that is. It's that kind of realism, that kind of connection. We auditioned a couple years ago. We were dealing with a major bank that was having some financial difficulties and some kind of customer service and customer relations thing. And they had to redo a whole complete rebranding. And they auditioned a number of people, and I had a client in the office. We worked the material together, and all of a sudden you hear that read, and like you just kind of work a little bit in it, like make some adjustments, and you send them a couple different versions because, yeah, as I said, everyone's got a voice in their head. But it's all about being able to connect with it. What
Hmm.
I've learned about teaching classes and working with clients is that you can tell if someone doesn't like a product. I worked with this woman, and we were reading copy from Mazda, and she was like, "So it's such a good car," and I could tell. I went to her and I went, I said, you don't like a Mazda. I said, you probably had a bad experience with that Mazda at one point. It probably broke down. You probably got one of those with the rotary engine, and it leaked oil all over your thing. She goes, how'd you know that? I said, because I can hear it. I said, so what do you drive now? She goes, oh, I love my Honda Civic. I love it. I love it. I love it. I go, you have to do that transference then in that way. And she did it, and all of a sudden they gave her a better read, but she had to work through it in her head. But if you don't like Brussels sprouts, you're not going to talk well about them,
Yeah, no.
you know. But I've also had a guy that was a vegan and loved animals and stuff like that. And he was the voice of Farmer John's sausages for 15 years. So
Wow.
you
Yeah,
never
I
meet.
mean, yeah, that's interesting. But and it makes sense. Like if you had a bad experience with possibly a product, that product or that bank or that people, whoever it might be, of course, your tone might come up might come off a little rough.
And how many times have you talked to a friend where you're talking about something and you can see it on their face, like you're talking about your friend Jack or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I like Jack. He's so
Yeah.
amazingly," because you have nothing to do to kind of hide that stuff. You can't use these things. You have to get all that through here, and it comes out that way. It's amazing how subtle it is, and you can hear the differences. And you can hear when people don't believe in something.
So, has there ever been a time that someone surprised you? Like maybe they didn't like the obvious choice at first, but then totally blew you away on an actor, like on a
A couple of
voiceover?
times. I represented this woman. She was really fun. We were doing an animation project, and they were really having a hard time finding this role for the character. And I said, hey, give this a shot. Give it a whirl. See what happens. And she got the job as a young black guy for an animated series. You kind of can't do this right now in terms of the kind of marketplace right now, but you look at Hank Azaria and all the characters he did on Simpsons. That was a
Right.
hard kind of animation. I represented this guy for a while that did the most amazing Robert Stack impersonation ever. And it was really great. And so we did this, and we had a client that wanted a Robert Stack impersonation from Unsolved Mysteries. And so we represented Robert at the time, but I knew he wouldn't do it for the price they wanted. And I said, I've got someone who will do this for you. Let me have him audition for you, and we'll go from there. So they loved it. They said, we're coming into town to record it. I said, fantastic. They got all excited. The guy represented was a big 300-pound black guy. I said, you're coming into the studio. I said, go in the studio and just be, as neighborhood as you want to be. And he went in, and I got this panic phone call from the client. I think you sent us the wrong guy. And I go, give him a moment. He goes in the booth, does the whole thing, goes, we love him. Okay, bye. It was dead on in that way. So things like that, when you see people that can do those kind of magical voices, when you look at someone like a Jim Meskimen who does every kind of voice in that way, that's interesting. And and he's not like a Rich Little. Back in the day, he was like kind of the first kind
Hmm.
of impressionist type guy. But also then when you work with a client and they're the kind that's joking with you all the time and having a good time and blah, blah, blah. But then you realize that they have kind of that announcer voice, that they can be more than just the kind of neighborhood friendly guy or the dumb dad or whatever it might be. So when they get that thing and they change their voice and they change their read in that way, and you see them go get shit, you can have a car commercial, and then they get one, and then all of a sudden they're just not that guy making a decent living. They're that guy making a great living.
Nice. All right. So let's talk demos.
Okay.
Because of someone wanting to break into voiceover, whether it's commercials, animation, or trailers, obviously the demo is everything. In your opinion, what absolutely needs to be on there and what do people keep getting wrong?
Well, commercially, you need to find your signature read, how you want to sell yourself. I've represented a lot of people that have had a long career in this way. And every time we did a demo for them, instead of using the products that they did, we would do a fake demo, because what we're looking to do is sell the future. Where do you want to be selling next? They may have sold all these things in that way, and their voice is fine and the demo's fine, but we push their read. They're looking to shift their read. They want to start selling more things. So I always look to try to what we call sell the future in that way. And you want to update those demos, on a year to 2 year basis. What people don't believe is that, my voice probably hasn't changed that much in the last 30 years. So everyone thinks, oh, I've got the same voice as I did when I was, 20 or so like that. The thing is, I now am thinking like a person like my father. So the way that you think and the way that a 20-year-old is thinking are two completely different things. And that's what people
Mhm.
don't realize about in the voiceover side of it, that your viewpoint is different. You know, people know how to use a landline. I know people that never knew what a landline was. Or I had an iPod and everyone listens to Spotify. What's Apple Music? What's that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
So those your attitude stuff in that. So with the demo, you want to find your what we call your true voice, your signature voice, your selling voice. Animation wise, you want to be able to do a bunch of different characters in a certain way, but you don't want to do that standard character. Everybody's got a pirate, a witch, some kind of wacky voice, an alien, and you want to really kind of find, what makes Pamela Adlon so great, that she does Bobby on King of the Hill and the lead from Recess and all that kind of stuff, and the other work that she's done. What's made Vanessa Marshall so great in terms of doing all the Star Wars characters that she does, or Steven Stanton, who does all these amazing characters. They all have a signature voice. And so, one of the great ways to kind of figure out how you want to make your demo in a way is figure out what your signature read is, but also, these demos are posted everywhere on their own websites, on the agency websites. So listening to them and getting an idea on how they're selling themselves is a great thing. Your demo is just basically a sample of what you do, and it doesn't have to be full spots. It's just touching little pieces. When you're doing a narration piece, you want it to be longer because people want to hear you read your, books on tape, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
The toughest part of the business is becoming a promo trailer guy, and I don't recommend that to a lot of people. It's a heavy road, and there's like 15 guys doing it right now, or men and women, and they're always the business in that side of it is always going to be stuck with those guys. You can break into it, but it's a really tough road, where commercially it's kind of all over the place and open.
Okay, very interesting. So, are there any trends that you're seeing in demos right now that you think are going to fade soon? Yeah.
Climate of the world, as you see how things go, changes all the time.
Mhm.
After 9/11, everything got very serious for a while, and it took a while for people to start building up humor, and then all of a sudden, a year later, that came in. When you've got, when things are kind of crazy and cranky, sometimes you'll either get a super wacky humor or you'll get more real humor. So it's kind of finding out that climate stuff. And it like I said, it changes like every year or two. Probably about every 2 years, you can see a shift in terms of how things go. You know, and the Super Bowl spots are kind of a really good indicator of how things are going at that point. If they're a lot more comedy in there, then that's great. Or if it's a more like he's just like us Jesus commercials, then you're like, okay, we're headed down that path. Everything's super woke and super politically correct now. And I bet that's going to shift out at some point. You're going to get in a little bit of that. I believe as Americans, we can't not live without our dark humor. So
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So it's going to come back. The problem with things right now in terms of where the marketplace is that with the internet out there, people are used to saying whatever they want, whenever they want, and however they want. And it gives this terrible freedom of people to be internet trolls and not be seen but heard. And people get accused of things right away without a lot of proof sometimes. So that's the tough part about it. It's just that there you can anyone can say anything, and it can go down a dark path quickly. So that's the balance that you're trying to find. And I think you're going to find a little bit more humor in here as things get really kind of crazy and cranky. You're going to start seeing some a little bit more fun stuff.
Good. I'm ready for it. So let's talk a little bit about coaching. I know you're a big believer in coaching,
Mhm.
um, but just how important is it really? What's the difference between someone who just has talent and someone who actually, oh, sorry, let's just talk about coaching. How important is it really?
So it's very bonding. You build a relationship with someone that you're working with. Like I said, we are always trying to sell the future. Where are we going next? How are we going to keep your income level at this way and your work level this way and your opportunities this way? So it comes out to the kind of networking that you're doing. And my job then is also then to work with you in terms of building up your relationships and how you work your relationships out. Uh, it's always important. People in the beginning used to come out here for the studios and come out and spend a weekend out here. Now, no one's spending that kind of money in terms of traveling, and so many people work from home now. You can
Uh-huh.
set up a pretty inexpensive and solid studio system with just some high speed internet and some good programming and a decent mic, and you're good to go. Yeah, the fact that so many people are auditioning just on your phone right now because the quality of recording from your phone has gotten better, that you don't need to have a huge studio anymore. The coaching part of it comes in terms of helping people grow their demo, but also grow their business. You have to get them to realize, once, as I said before, give them what you do as opposed to what you think they want. Once you get over that, it's building up. It really comes out to building up confidence in people. So many people are so unconfident in so many ways. They're not comfortable in being themselves. My job is to make you comfortable in yourself, because that way, the more comfortable you are, the better are you at selling stuff, the way you're going to grow. And you'll see those changes in there. And I think that's true in terms of anything that we do. If you can make someone
Mhm.
just kind of believe in themselves, you're going to come off confident. How many times you try to date somebody and if they're like, you're like, okay, you got nothing, you know, but as I told these kids from MTV when I worked with them, they wanted to meet these people. This guy wanted to meet this girl. I go, well, you can't get laid without saying hello, and that's it's gonna open. You guys gotta open that door, and that's the
Yeah.
confidence side of it. That's what it comes out to.
Well, and I agree. I mean, confidence, it's across the board. I mean, I work with people who lack confidence and I help them get that confidence back,
Hmm.
because when you don't have that confidence, how are you going to be able to represent yourself when you go in for an interview? Because if you don't have confidence in yourself and your work and your repertoire of work, and it works, I'm obviously in the same way and your end, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to get the job. No matter how great your voice or your talent is, if you can't showcase and show that you are confident what you did, I think that's you're going to fail, unfortunately. And when
Yeah,
you get
everybody wants.
coached, if you get coached and then you learn how to be more confident, huge, huge, huge.
Like when you're like you said, when you're interviewing with something like that, your body language and all that stuff. If you're sitting there and you're like this and you got your legs
Mhm.
crossed, get rid of that blocking. You want to be open. You want to, use your hands when you're kind of interviewing that, and that shows a sense of relaxation. Your stomach may be in knots and you'll have IBS for the rest of the day, but overall you're gonna, the 30 minutes or whatever that you're in, and
Yeah.
really is just kind of like, you have to let people know. Like I tell them, I said, I believe in you. I said, this is your job. This is what we got to do. And one of the things I've also learned, like when we work with people in the booth and they audition, once I hear that take, when you hear that take, wow, that was the one you got. That was really just great. That's definitely, I'm selling that one. I go, let's do another one for fun, because what has happened in their mind, all that pressure's gone. I got that one. I got it out. I got it out. I said, just do whatever you want. Just give me one more for fun. And that read actually sometimes becomes better. And I end up sending both of those because they're so relaxed. And at this point, they're giving me something natural and comfortable. And that's where you want people to be. It's that believability.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So, what's the difference between someone who just has talent and someone who actually becomes a working voice actor?
Geez, there's so many things, it could be just the way that the market's going, after George Floyd, it was all DEI stuff and all that stuff shifted. So had that. Uh, I mean, commercially, you don't know. You used to have people that you just kind of knew where this was going to go, and I firmly believe having any type of ability to do humor, definitely take improv classes. I think having that kind of ability to do improv, because you can read a piece of copy and you know it's written poorly, but because you can think on your feet and how to make it sound like you, then it makes
Uh-huh.
it sound right and believable. Is kind of helpful without overdoing it and putting so much of you into it, because sometimes you still have to follow the words. There's copywriters are out there and they want to hear their words written. They get specific about that. Some people just have a great voice, but also having a great voice. I've represented people that have won Oscars that can't book a voiceover job to save their lives because they're so busy talking like this all the time instead of being just kind of a real person.
Yeah.
But you look at someone like Gary Oldman, who, he's a master in terms of kind of being a different character all the time. When you try to get someone like him to do that kind of work there, he's asking you, well, what specific are you looking for? I worked with the guy that did every voice. He could do every kind of animal voice on the planet. And when they say, okay, we want to hire this guy to be a dog, and it would be like, what kind of dog? How big is it? Is it a golden retriever? Is it a German Shepherd, Saint Bernard? Is it Chihuahua? All these dogs have different sounds. And they're like, I said, well, give specific, very much kind of like John Travolta in that movie, Phenomenon, specifics, sometimes
Mhm.
when you're doing things like that, you need to be specific. And that's the thing, like I said, everyone has that voice in their head. So
That
that's how when you go for, some people just have a natural voice and can read. But when you listen to someone like John Hamm was terrible on Mercedes when he started. He was doing well on the show, and if the show was just starting to kick a little bit, and he just read it very announcery. But as he had it for a period of time, he became the John Hamm that we know and love and was really relaxed. I think also for him, after he got that comfortability in terms of being on Mad Men like that, now then you saw him doing all the comedy that he does. Look at all the times he did all that SNL stuff. That brought him out of his shell and let him be a little bit more relaxed. All that stuff helps everything in someone's career. That
For sure, yeah. So, is there a point ever when a voice actor can stop training, or is this one of those lifelong skills you're always sharpening?
it's one of those lifelong skills that you are always sharpening. I don't know if you have to train all the time, but also as you are, sometimes people audition a lot and then we're working, but then can't get any new material. So what are they doing wrong? That's how we look at it that way. It's not what are you doing wrong, is this how are you not doing it right? So, you work with a coach in that way, and that's second opinion. And also I think because you're spending so much time usually in a dark room by yourself, just kind of cranking material out and doing your kind of regular jobs that you do, you lose touch with what's kind of happening outside. And if, especially when you got DoorDash and Uber Eats and everything coming to you now, you're not out there experiencing the world. So you kind of have to go out and just see the people, go see a movie at a theater, just hear things around you, just be observant in that way, and let ridiculousness flow over you if you can in a certain way. Uh, and yeah, so I think if you feel that you're losing your signature mark or whatever, then definitely take some coaching. And it's usually kind of a touch up. Sometimes it's great to take a class with other people because you get to hear what they're doing, as opposed to taking an individual class at that point. An individual class is going to help you on your certain things. But if you don't know what you're missing, by hearing other people read that copy, you get a whole different perspective of the way it's all kind of learning.
Okay. So, can you think of a client who made a massive leap in their career because of coaching?
Yep. I represented two people together that were having a good career. They're generating stuff, getting good opportunities, stuff like that. But we knew there was some marketplace untapped. So the three of us sat down together and we worked on that together and really said, okay, great. We're going to go after this marketplace. We're going to go after the retail marketplace. We want to go after grocery stores that, come in today and buy 3 for $5 or today's specials on grapes or this kind of stuff, whatever. And so we worked those different types of retail stuff where it was car copy and you read, this lease, blah, 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 and kind of that kind of stuff. You did talk about groceries, you talk about anything that was kind of in those selling things. We took that, we made a special demo for that. We put it on the same thing together so that you gave the people an option of a male and a female. We found a great research in terms of a list that we sent out about 10 to 15,000 demos out to everybody in the nation. in a period of time. They increased their career just based on that additional six figures each. They put, it costs about $25,000 to kind of build the demo and sell it out and mail it and all the things. And we did, and we, like I said, we all worked on it together. But it got a great ROI that it continued to work for them down the road. But they saw that right away, and then it continued on a couple years later as well.
Awesome. That's great. Good
Yeah.
for you guys and good for them. So,
It was
yeah.
fun. And then, the agency loved it in the fact that they saw that I'm putting effort into it then too. So, if you can, not many people get to increase their career money that way unless they get some big job. You go and you get a car commercial and you're going to get it right away. You're going to get a nice six figure, almost $1 million at that point, if not more. But, we used to look at it that way, back in the day when things ran on television and no one's watching ABC anymore, but when they were, you got a McDonald's commercial. That McDonald's commercial ran 13 weeks or 26 weeks, and that paid for your education because the residuals on it were so great. Now nothing's running as much, and there's a lot of streaming platforms. The money's not nearly as big in that, but you're working twice as hard to make half the money.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know about the ad side of it just because my sister, after working in television, like she definitely told me the the pros and the cons and how streaming has completely changed the world on that.
You know what? They screwed up. They screwed up the best working model that the networks ever had, where they got all this money that they didn't have to kind of account for, and they could kind of change the rate any way they want. Now you have subscribers. You have flatlined your income.
Yeah. So let's change it a little bit. So you've worked on both the commercial side and the promo side, and those are very different beasts.
Mm-hmm.
So for folks who aren't in the know, can you break down the difference and how should talent approach each?
Commercial is everything that you see. So if you look at the big pyramid of everything, as not the food pyramid, but whatever. When you look at the base of it, the bulk of the copy out there is going to be commercial copy. That's all your radio stuff and everything on television. That's going to be your bulk of it. You're then going to run into your animation copy because there's so much stuff of that, but but it also goes up. So you've got less of that and less people doing it. Disney tends to hire a lot of the same people all the time. Fox tends to hire a lot of the same people all the time because like, as we talked before, you can do a lot of those multiple voices. Then you kind of go into your narration and audiobook stuff. And, you look at someone like a Scott Brick who does a lot of audiobooks because he's very natural about that. Or, if you listen to Jim Dale if you've ever listened to Harry Potter, listen to Jim Dale read Harry Potter because he does a different voice for every character as opposed to having someone else. And I think there's 780 characters in the last book, and he does a slightly different voice. I mean, it's him, but you can tell that he's got a voice for Hermione, he's got a voice for Ron, he's got a voice for Harry. So that kind of work. So you do things like that. And then you got the promo trailer stuff, which is the peak, and it's the least amount of people and the least amount of copy. You have to do different demos for each one of those. So if you go and look at someone who's got demos on any website or their own website, you'll see that they've got a commercial demo, they've got a narration demo, they've got an animation demo if they do it. You don't have to do everything. Concentrate on what you do best. Everyone wants to get promo trailers because they think they're going to make all the money in the world. And everyone thinks that voiceover is easy. I can sit in my underwear and do this. And it's not, because as we talked about. And also, when the people are sitting down and doing that work, you're putting yourself off. Stand and read your copy. You're going to get a better performance out of it. Also, don't wear headphones. When you wear headphones, you're more listening to how you're saying it as opposed to what you're saying. And no one has a conversation talking to people with headphones in it. And so you go and have interaction in that way. But, do what you do best and make the commercial side of it as real as possible. And the rest of it will kind of come naturally. You'll find out if you can do animation stuff or if you can do promo stuff or audiobooks. But it's not as easy as you think and don't think. And people go, my mom tells me I have a great voice. I go, that's awesome. Is she hiring?
It's funny that you bring that up because my mom's like, oh, you should ask him if you could do voice acting, if you think you'd be good in voice acting when I was going to have this interview with you. And I'm like, okay, just because I have a podcast doesn't mean I'm going to be great in voice acting.
Mom,
thank you.
Mom, do you have the Mercedes account? Because I hear they're looking for a new voice.
I mean, I feel very flattered that she thinks I could do it, but I don't even think she's listened to my podcast. So I find it funny that she says that.
Thanks for the support.
Yeah. Thanks, Mom. But, so what do you find is the most common mistake that people make when trying to cross over between commercial and promo or from one to the other?
They make their commercial demo too promo-y and their promo demo to commercially. Everyone thinks that it's all that Don LaFontaine in a world, in a land,
Yeah.
before time, in the time. And if, I don't know if you've ever watched the trailer for The Comedian. It's classic. It was a Jerry Seinfeld movie that came out
Hmm.
probably 20 some years ago. So when I worked at Cunningham, it's our client Hal Douglas in the booth, and he does hysterical when you know anything about voiceover. They're like, it's not that kind of movie. In a land, no, in a time, in a land before time. One man, two men, two women. And it goes on, and you're just like the booth director's getting all mad at him. I'm sorry. What's the difference in the promos?
What did I add? I'm sorry.
That's okay. We've had random, like I've had random direction. Like one time I had a client, he worked and it's on this guy, Dean Cameron.
Oh.
It's on his website. He
Mhm.
did a job for me and it took him 2 hours to record one spot because the director couldn't express what he really wanted to get out. And that's the direction stuff. And finally, at one point he goes, I want it more mint chip. And Dean did this great comedy bit on the whole thing. So that's on his website, but
Funny.
you get those random things like that. You have to realize that a lot of the people that are doing this stuff are not exactly sure what they want either. So like I said, give them what you give and not what you think they want. Because it'll be more, like I said, more real.
I think you answered the question, but I said, what's the most common mistake that when people are trying to cross over from one to the other? And
Yeah.
you
So
said,
it's
yeah.
that kind of stuff. It's just trying to, I firmly believe it's giving them what you think they want.
So in your experience, which side is more challenging for newcomers and why?
I think animation and promo are the toughest ones. With promo, you usually have to have a voice and kind of know that read, but it's, that promo market shifts sometimes where it gets very unnatural and big, like Don LaFontaine, and or then goes more real, like a Reno Romano or someone in that way. I think a lot of the biggest thing that people make is an animation mistake where they, I sell the best witch all the time, or they do the same demo that everybody has. And there's not an agent or a casting director or a producer that wants to hear the same kind of thing. I think all villains should be like this or all this other kind of stuff is that way. And that's not the case. It's, watch it. And also so many people don't watch animation when they do animation. If you really want to get an animation, watch it. You got to watch. And because everything's different, the stuff that you see for the Avengers is going to be different than you see.
No. Okay. So in your experience, which side is more challenging for newcomers, the commercial or the promo, and why?
I would say the promo side of it, because it's just the toughest part and people don't really have that kind of voice and or know the read. And it's just such a small niche market in that way. And everyone thinks that it's super easy to do. Animation is equally as difficult in a way because A, they don't like to let a lot of people in, but B, you have to give something very unique and not everyone is as unique as they think.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like when you listen to those kind of demos, you hear the same thing all the time. You're like, okay, until you hear something different. I think really, especially in animation, so many people don't watch it. So therefore they don't get it. And if you really just kind of have to, if you really want to get any of these things, listen to a lot of commercials first before you start doing your demo. Listen to the voices differently. Listen to, just record a bunch of things on ABC and then just with your eyes closed, listen to the voice, because if you watch it, your brain's going to operate visually really well. You want to use your ears to hear how they're saying things different, and does it sound believable and real? Radio stuff has kind of lost all its humor, so they're kind of in that way. But the same with anything with animation, listen to the voices as opposed to watching it. With promos, or trailers, when you're hearing to how are they selling the product, and it's really by just you take away your vision and you take away 90% of what's happening, and you're really going to be a better person for it by just listening.
I like that advice. That's really good. I never thought about listening to something and not watching it. Especially now we watch a lot of animated shows because we love animated shows. And now I'm going to have to try. I'm going to have to close my eyes when I listen to some of these characters now.
Now, my boyfriend loses it with me because he'll be going to sleep and stuff like that. And he likes to watch a lot of cartoons before he goes to sleep. Our schedules are different because he works in nightlife, and I'll be falling asleep. And I said, "Oh, good night, Kevin," or "Good night, Vanessa," or "Good night, Pamela." Like, how do you know that?
That's really funny. So you've mentioned the voiceover world has gotten more inclusive for LGBTQ plus folks, which is amazing to see. So what's changed over the years and what do you feel is still missing?
Definitely the wokeness of what everyone was looking for, kind of changed a lot of the animation stuff. And, even look at movies like Lawrence of Arabia, and you have Alec Guinness playing, a Saudi Arabian. So that stuff is kind of gone. When they're doing this kind of animation stuff and being specific, they are looking for from people from specific regions or specific nationalities. They want to try to use, there's more non-binary and trans work out there coming out right now, which I think is important for them. And it's true, a voice that comes from a person that is transitioning is a much different sounding voice than it would be from somebody that hasn't done that.
Mhm.
And so you want to hear those specific. I think they're trying to be as real as they possibly can. That inclusivity has been really good. It was for a long, long time a fully male dominated business, except for animation in that way. That's changed a lot as people get kind of comfortable with their product, and I think that's the good stuff too. You're hearing more women in the trailer side of it and promo side of it, and that was really only for certain things and like daytime stuff. And now you're hearing women's voices in prime time. So I think that's where it is all good. What it does is it opens the doors. But I also firmly believe that after the last strike, the commercial strike we had in 2000 and the recent strike that we had now with the acting,
Mhm.
it opened up a lot. So it just gave people a lot more things. And also when you're recording from home, it makes it easier then too. So you're kind of got more people from across the nation as opposed to people just being in New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's a show that we watch, actually an animated show that we watch. There is a character that I honestly don't remember who did the original voice, but I remember they recently, I think it was over the last couple of seasons, they changed the voice actor to be, because it was a trans character, and they actually changed them to be a trans voice actor. And it is, now I will admit, because I love the show so much, it is interesting. I can 100% hear the difference, but I
Right.
but I love that character. It's such a fun character, so I was like, you know what? They did the right thing. They put in, they changed who it needed to be representing that character, that voice. And so kudos to the show for doing it,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that actually makes a huge difference. And also it shows that those out there who are non-binary, trans, whoever it might be, that's maybe trying to get into the business, oh, look, they actually might hire a trans person
Mm-hmm.
to do this role, if they're looking for that character, that type of character.
Yeah, and that's just definitely in the animation side of it has become stronger. Also, as you get wacky shows like Rick and Morty, or people that are kind of creative in that way, and they come up with all these different things like Crapopolis or whatever, who's the same creator, they get it more open in terms of finding random stuff, and it also then makes it more difficult to cast. I mean, there aren't as many people that are trans or non-binary or whatever kind of thing, that that is hard to get that kind of role. So it does take longer sometimes.
So, has there been a recent casting choice or project that made you think, yes, this is the direction that we need to go?
I just think across the board, I think as they're kind of being a little bit more real. You know, the other part of it is like, let's not lose the humor. Let's
Mhm.
make sure that person who's going to do that voice can be as funny as the person we're losing. My feeling is that people are too overly woke sometimes, and therefore they lose the humor of just someone kind of being this parody or sarcasm in that way. And so that's the disappointing side of it. I think you can find somebody new that's great, that can be funny in that way, or be entertaining, or just be real, is important. But also, if we're doing a comedy show, let's, know that we can do whatever we want, kind of have that fun.
Okay, yeah. And for LGBTQ plus talent just starting out, how can they advocate for themselves without feeling like they're being tokenized?
Everyone's being kind of a little bit more, we're all being gentrified in that way. How many times, I go out in West Hollywood a lot, and you don't see as many gays out as they used to be, because they moved to the Valley and they're going to local bars there. So you're kind of losing, everyone's a little bit more accepting, except for the South, I guess, still. But, in terms of everyone else, you're gentrifying. It's a little bit different because everyone wants to assimilate in a certain way. So you're not having that specific voice out there. You're not working that agenda. So I don't think you have to work as hard. It's all about being natural. Like I said, being true to yourself and being confident in who you are is going to be what's going to sell you in that way. And people are going to like you as long as you're not an asshole.
I would agree with that in every aspect. Yeah, I mean, 100%. That goes across the board in any job, really. But
Across the
yeah.
board, exactly.
So let's go. We're gonna do some myth busting to wrap up. So what's one common misconception about voiceover work you wish more people understood, especially LGBTQ plus actors trying to break in?
It's not as easy as you think. You can't read and do your job in your underwear. You have to actually put effort into it. Voiceover is not a hobby.
Nice. I like that.
Mhm.
So we are going to have a little bit of fun.
Okay.
Let me ask you. As I mentioned to you before we started recording, these are just some kind of fun, rapid fire questions that I ask all my guests on my show. So, what is your voiceover agent alter ego at a pub? Are you more like a BBC drama critic or Let's Do Shots with SpongeBob?
Yeah, I like to do shots with SpongeBob. He's a fun person to drink with.
I like that. Okay, so and it's funny that we've been talking a little bit this just on trailer stuff and everything.
Mhm.
So if your life had a trailer voice, who would narrate it and what would the title be?
The title of the movie,
Mhm.
what some people refer to me as the Dasher of Hopes and Crusher of Dreams, and I might get Ashton Smith to do it for me,
All right.
or maybe Jim Tasker.
Very nice. All right. So you've been around the world. What's one meal, if you have done this, what's one meal you'd have flown in on demand, voiceover diva style?
There was a restaurant here called Cynthia's that had the best fried chicken, the best chicken and shrimp dumplings, and the blackberry cobbler. And I would have that sent in. And I learned how to make the blackberry cobbler during COVID. So now I make that on my own. But I can't make that fried chicken with the mashed potatoes and the green beans. And I don't know how she made these delicious chicken and shrimp dumplings with this pepper sauce that she made her own rolls with. And so I would take that.
That sounds good.
It's really good. It was really good.
That sounds really, really good, actually.
It was like these overcooked green beans, delicious mashed potatoes with it, and it's heaven.
Wow. Yum. Now I'm hungry. Thanks, Jerry.
You're welcome.
So, what key piece of advice or actionable tip could you leave our listeners today from all our conversation we've had?
I just think, it is all about being confident in yourself and believing in yourself. It's not the easiest thing to do. It's something easy to say, but it does come out through things, and it will carry you, through your life. As I said, you can't get laid without saying hello, and that means you have to go up and talk to somebody, and that is the toughest part. A lot of people don't want to do that. That's why everyone does everything on the apps now. And it's always amazing to me when I go and see people at the bars and they're on the apps looking for people that are 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet away. I'm like, dude, just, you can see that person. Do you like their face? I mean, then go with it from there. But, people have a hard time talking to each other. I think networking is very important, and don't be afraid to, that's another thing too, just being confident in terms of kind of going out and reaching out to other people in that way. Some people are going to shut you down. That's going to happen all the time. But other people are going to go, sure, I'll talk to you about it. And if you are going to spend time with somebody, is kind of knowing your elevator pitch. What is your unicorn moment? How are you different than anybody else? And knowing that and having that in your wheelhouse is the way to go.
All right, I want to ask one more question. I'm sorry. Someone brought this up to me and I had to ask it. How is AI changing the voice acting business?
Well, they're going to take people's voices, alive or dead. Once the voice hears it, you can do a couple of samples. But say, for example, Donald Sutherland really really recently passed away. He's done a ton of voiceover
Right.
stuff. So now they can take all those kind of voice samples from his theatrical stuff and whatever, throw it into the AI computer, and then have it spit out him talking in that way and coming up with his own words. They can kind of work that stuff out. So I think that's going to start happening. You're going to find out I think it's going to affect more theatrically at that point. You're not going to have as many extras because what they want to do, and certain companies want to do, is they want to scan an actor and then be able to, just because you can with AI, change their hair color, change their clothing. And you can have one person scan that thing and boom, they're in an 1800 movie, they're in a sci-fi movie, they're on a submarine, and it's the same thing. They just scan the whole thing. That's where that AI stuff's going to happen. It's not in that phase where it can create its own stuff yet, but it can mimic.
Mm-hmm.
And as audio quality has gone down and down, when we were younger before us, everyone listened to on vinyl, and it went through analog. And that sound, if you ever listen to vinyl on someone's analog stereo system, the richness that comes out of a good set of speakers like that is insane. But when you go to an MP3 or even a smaller format like an M4A, it squishes all that audio down. So people are used to just playing MP3s and they don't care. All that music gets all that thing gets squished and it all gets tinny. And that's, you just said you've lost the joy of what real audio will sound like.
I agree with you. There is something, like you mentioned with vinyl, there's that special sound. I think it
Hmm.
brings that little bit of extra that you don't get when you listen to it, like you said, on an MP3 or, so.
Especially if you listen to something like if you're listening to jazz, you're listening to bigger music, you're listening to a great vocalist in that way. The way that comes through the tubes and how it was done and how it's broadcast in that way is so much more interesting and really just brings out this warmth.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jerry, this was incredible. Your insight, your honesty, your quotes. I love your quotes. This is why people love working with you. So I want to thank you for pulling back the curtain
Thank you.
on the voiceover world and reminding us that with the right support, anyone can find and get paid for their voice. So if this episode lit a spark for you listeners, maybe you've got a voice people remember or you're curious about making your side hustle, speak up. Let me know. DM me or drop me a comment if you're ready to explore coaching, confidence, or what it means to show up in your career without shrinking. And don't forget to follow this podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with the loudest, funniest, or most underpaid friend you've got. Until next time, stay empowered, stay out, and keep using your voice to build the career that truly speaks for you.